You keep trying to fix yourself. You keep trying to straighten what feels crooked inside you, to stitch what seems torn, to polish what you imagine should shine. And every time you do, there is a wave of exhaustion that follows. A quiet heaviness, a sense that something in you is tired of being repaired again and again, as if the soul itself were whispering that healing was never meant to be a project. It was meant to be a meeting. You feel this truth at the edges of your awareness, in the moments when the world becomes silent enough for you to notice the tremble beneath your ribs, in the way your mind circles around the same questions, searching for answers that always seem to slip like water through your fingers. You ask yourself why you cannot simply be fixed, why your wounds refuse to obey your will, why the past keeps returning in symbols and echoes. And yet something in you knows there is another way. You sense it when you look at your reflection in the mirror, not the surface of your face, but the eyes that watch you from a place you rarely enter. There is a presence there, a version of you who has been waiting in the doorway of your inner life, a quiet witness who has never left you, even when you abandoned yourself in the rush to become acceptable, admirable, and vulnerable. This forgotten self stands behind the glass, watching, patient, untouched by the masks you wear. You feel the call strongest at night, when the noise of the day dissolves and the mind softens, when the shadows on the walls seem to speak a language you almost understand, when a faint ache rises from the depths, asking to be held rather than solved. In these moments you are closer to your truth than you realize. You can sense an ancient forest within you, a place where your steps have not yet reached, a place where the forgotten parts of you still live. Healing begins there, not in the correction of your flaws, but in the quiet recognition of your forgotten inner companions. The timid child you left behind, the rebel you silenced, the dreamer you dismissed, the wounded one you avoided. They wait in the underbrush of your psyche, near a river that flows through every dream you ever had. You have walked past them for years, searching for some imagined perfection outside yourself, unaware that what you seek has been calling your name all along. You do not need to fix these parts. You need to see them, to sit beside them like you would sit beside a fire at dawn, to listen to the breath of your own being as if it were a sacred language. You heal in the moment you stop running toward an image of wholeness and begin walking toward the truth of who you already are. There is a door inside you, and it opens not with force but with presence. You feel the handle beneath your palm now, warm from years of waiting. Something on the other side is ready to be met. Something you have carried through every night, every hardship, every longing. And yet, beneath it all, something still calls your name. There is a moment in every inner journey when you realize that the path is not forward or upward. It is inward. It moves through the soft soil of your memories and the dark water of your emotions. It leads you through corridors carved by experiences you thought you had forgotten. And as you walk, you begin to sense the architecture of your own psyche, not as a theory or a concept, but as a living landscape that breathes beneath your awareness. You notice how every fear has a shape, how every longing has a voice, how every wound has a face that looks oddly familiar. The unconscious is not an empty night. It is a forest illuminated by its own moon, a place where the roots of your being intertwine with forgotten dreams and unspoken truths. You have spent much of your life standing at the edge of this forest, afraid of its shadows, believing they would swallow you whole. Yet the shadows were never your enemies. They were gateways. When you step inside, you feel the air shift. It carries the scent of old emotions and incomplete stories. You start to recognize that every unresolved moment in your life did not disappear. It simply went underground, storing its energy, waiting for you to return with eyes that could finally see. And in this quiet territory of the psyche, the forgotten begins to whisper. It calls to you through symbols, through images that appear in dreams, through sensations that rise without reason. These are not distortions. They're invitations. There is a river here, flowing through the landscape of your inner world. Its waters reflect every part of you, even the ones you turned away from. When you lean closer, you see not a distorted reflection, but a deeper one. One that includes your sorrow, your tenderness, your hidden strength. The river does not judge. It simply reveals. And as you watch, you feel the truth settle gently within you. Healing is not about forcing the water to become clear. It is about allowing yourself to see what it has been showing you all along. You were taught to meet pain with resistance, to treat discomfort as a flaw that should not exist, to believe that emotional struggle meant something was wrong with you. But here, inside this deeper territory, you notice something different. Pain is a torch. It illuminates the path that leads to the parts of yourself you abandoned. Sorrow is a teacher. It pulls you back to the moments where your heart fractured, so you can reclaim the fragment that stayed behind. Every difficult emotion carries the scent of your real story. In this space, you begin to understand that what you call healing is really a reconciliation with your own nature. A meeting between the self that walks in the daylight and the self that dreams in the dark. The daylight self wants clarity, control, and certainty. It wants to plan its way out of discomfort. It wants linear progress. But the dreaming self moves in spirals. It speaks in symbols. It understands that transformation is not a straight line, but a slow unfolding. You feel this tension within you. The part of you that wants to move ahead, and the part that wants to be felt. The part that analyzes and the part that cries. The part that reaches outward and the part that retreats inward. And somewhere between these two movements lies the mystery that Jung spent his life studying. The meeting point, the threshold, the place where the unconscious rises to meet consciousness, and something new is born between them. This meeting is not dramatic. It is not a lightning strike. It is a candle in a quiet room, a soft glow that reveals what has been there from the beginning. You see the forgotten child sitting by a broken dream. You see the teenager who learned to hide their fear behind laughter. You see the adult who armored their heart to survive. And in each of these figures you recognize yourself, not as you wish to be, but as you truly are. This recognition is the first breath of healing. The forest opens into a clearing. In the center stands an old mirror, framed by vines and time. When you approach it, you feel something tremble inside you. You expect to see a flawed reflection, but what you see instead is someone who has carried every sorrow without breaking. Someone who has walked through nights of confusion and still rises with hope. Someone who is not defined by wounds, but shaped by their capacity to endure. The mirror reveals not perfection, but depth. And you realize that this depth is what makes you human. You begin to understand why fixing yourself never worked. Fixing implies that you are broken, incomplete, insufficient. Meeting yourself implies that you are alive. You are dynamic. You are many layers woven together by time and experience. To meet yourself is to enter a temple built from your own soul. Its walls hold the echoes of every emotion you ever felt, every choice you ever made, every dream you ever carried. And in this temple there is no requirement to be flawless, only to be present. You feel a warmth rise from the center of your chest, like a quiet fire that has been waiting for air. It grows not from achieving anything, but from allowing everything. From letting the river flow, from listening to the forest, from touching the mirror without looking away. In this warmth you begin to sense the presence of something timeless, something that has always guided you, even when you felt lost. It is the self, watching from behind the veil of your thoughts. And yet, beneath it all, something still calls your name. There is a moment when you feel the weight of your own life pressed gently against your awareness. It happens in the quiet hours, when the world grows soft and your defenses loosen. You sense a pulling from within, as if a forgotten part of you were reaching through the darkness with open hands. You do not run this time. You stand still. You breathe. And as you breathe, something inside you begins to stir, like leaves moving in a hidden corner of an ancient forest. The air around you feels dense with memory. You hear echoes that do not belong to the present. You feel emotions that do not match the moment. This is the unconscious rising, not as a storm, but as a mist that fills the space between your thoughts. You try to understand it, but understanding is not what it asks. It asks to be felt. It asks to be acknowledged. It asks to be met without judgment. And this simple act of meeting begins to soften the walls you have built inside yourself. You walk deeper into the sensation. Your chest tightens. Your throat feels heavy. You sense the presence of an old loneliness, one you rarely allow yourself to notice. It sits like a small animal by the edge of a river, trembling, waiting for someone to come closer. You realize that this loneliness is not a flaw. It is a part of you that learned to hide when you were too young to understand what hiding cost. It carries the first traces of your wounded self. Not a broken self, but a sensitive one, shaped by the world before you had words to defend your heart. As you move toward this forgotten part, you see the psychology beneath it unfold. The unconscious does not speak in logic. It speaks through images, through sensations, through the quiet pull of something unresolved. Jung understood that the shadow is not darkness for the sake of darkness. It is the container of everything you left behind. Every instinct you suppressed, every emotion you feared would make you unworthy. Every truth you thought would make you unlovable. The shadow holds these fragments the way the forest holds fallen leaves, waiting for them to return to the soil. You kneel beside the river in your inner world. The water reflects your face, but the reflection shifts, becoming younger, then older, then soft, then haunted. You feel the sensation of watching your own life ripple before you. The river shows you not who you pretend to be, but who you have always been. A human being who learned too early to abandon themselves in order to be accepted. A soul who believed it had to earn belonging by silencing its own needs. The metaphor becomes alive inside you. The river is not just water. It is the flow of your emotional truth. It carries the stories you stopped telling. It carries the tears you held back. It carries the soft ache that rises whenever you feel unseen. And as you lean closer, you begin to understand why healing never came from fixing yourself. You cannot fix a river. You can only sit beside it and listen to its waters. You can only meet it where it is. A quiet realization arrives. You feel it not as a thought, but as a warmth spreading through your chest. You see that the part of you trembling by the river is not asking to be changed. It is asking to be held. This small figure is not broken. It is waiting for your presence. It wants to be met with tenderness. And as you extend your hand in this inner landscape, something shifts. The air grows lighter. The river grows clearer. The loneliness lifts its head and looks at you with eyes that once belonged to a younger you. You sit with this presence. You breathe with it. You feel the first threads of reconciliation forming between who you were and who you are now. You do not force anything. You simply remain. And in this stillness, a truth settles inside you. Healing is not something you chase. It is something you allow to unfold when you finally stop running from yourself. You rise slowly, but the connection remains. The forest seems warmer now. The river quieter. A sense of belonging expands within your ribs. You know you are not finished. There is more waiting to be met in the deeper chambers of your soul. And yet, Beneath it all, something still calls your name. You feel the path shift as you move deeper into your inner landscape. The forest grows taller around you, its branches arching like quiet guardians over your head. The light fades into a soft dusk, not threatening, simply honest. This is the hour when the psyche reveals what daylight conceals. You sense another presence waiting for you beyond the trees, a part of yourself you have avoided for years. Your steps slow, your breath deepens. You know what you are about to meet. You feel it before you see it. The air thickens with unspoken emotion. You sense the weight of anger that was never voiced, the heaviness of desires you denied, the sharp ache of betrayals you justified. These feelings gather in the shadows between the trees, forming a shape that becomes clearer as you approach. This is not the trembling loneliness you met before. This is the part of you that learned to protect itself by becoming fierce. It is the defender you hid because the world told you to be polite, calm, agreeable. Yet this defender carries your truth with a fire that has never gone out. You recognize the psychological movement unfolding inside you. This is the encounter with the shadow in its rawer form. Not the wounded child, but the force that grew around the wound. The side of you that learned to say no through silence. The side that learned to survive by repressing what felt dangerous to express. Jung understood that this part of the psyche holds not only negativity, but also vitality. It holds the instincts that keep you alive, the boundaries you struggled to claim, the authenticity you lost under layers of social conditioning. You step into a clearing and see a figure seated beside a small fire. The flames flicker with an orange glow, casting moving patterns on the ground. The figure lifts its head when you arrive. There is no hostility in its eyes, only exhaustion, only the weight of years spent guarding the parts of you you refuse to acknowledge. Its presence feels powerful, but tired, like a warrior who fought battles you never gave yourself permission to feel. The fire crackles softly. You sit across from this shadow figure. The warmth touches your skin. You sense heat rising in your chest, the kind of heat that comes when truth begins to surface. You remember moments when you swallowed your voice, when you let others decide your value, when you pretended you were fine to avoid conflict. All these memories rise from the flames like sparks, illuminating how much of your life was shaped by denial rather than choice. A metaphor begins to form inside you. The fire is not here to destroy. It is here to purify. You watch the flames dance and realize they are made from everything you buried, every boundary you ignored, every intuition you suppressed, every instinct you doubted. This fire burns not with rage, but with clarity. It shows you the strength you abandoned, the courage you mislabeled as danger, the passion you muted because it felt too alive. As you sit with this figure, you feel something shift. The defender was never your enemy. It was the part of you trying to keep you safe when you did not know how to keep yourself. It fought for your truth even when you rejected it. It carried your rage because you did not know how to honor it. It held your boundaries because you feared they would cost you love. It is not darkness. It is unclaimed power. You meet its gaze. In that gaze you see your own intensity, your own fire, your own capacity to protect what matters. For the first time, you do not turn away. You breathe into the heat rising in your chest. A sense of dignity awakens inside you. You feel taller, more grounded, more complete. You realize you do not need to extinguish this fire. You need to integrate it, to let it warm you instead of burn you. The figure beside the fire begins to fade into the glow, not disappearing but merging with you. You feel its strength settle into your spine. You feel its courage fill the space behind your heart. The clearing grows brighter. The forest feels less like a labyrinth and more like a home. You rise again, sensing that the journey continues. There is still another part of you waiting in the deeper chambers of your soul. And yet, beneath it all, something still calls your name. You move deeper into the landscape of your inner world, guided not by thought, but by a quiet pull that feels older than memory. The forest begins to open, and the air grows thinner, almost sacred. You sense a presence ahead that feels different from the others. Not wounded, not defensive, not hidden in darkness. This presence feels ancient, like something that has been watching your entire life unfold from a place beyond judgment. You slow your steps. Your heartbeat softens. Something in you knows you are approaching the deepest chamber of your psyche. The path leads you to a stone archway covered in moss. It feels like the entrance to a temple carved inside your own soul. You cross the threshold with a breath that feels like surrender. Inside, the air is cool and still. Light filters from an unseen source, soft and silver, illuminating the center of the chamber where a figure sits silently near a pool of still water. This figure is neither child nor warrior. It is calm, whole, unmoved by fear or desire. It carries the presence of someone who has waited lifetimes to be recognized. You approach slowly, not out of fear but reverence. This figure radiates a quiet stability, a groundedness that feels deeply familiar and yet foreign. You realize this presence has been with you in every moment when intuition guided you, when clarity broke through confusion, when compassion touched your heart even in the middle of chaos. It is the part of you that is untouched by trauma, untouched by ego, untouched by the storms of the outer world. It is the self, the center of your inner cosmos, the silent witness who has observed everything without ever being harmed. Psychologically, you recognize this encounter. It is the integration point Jung devoted his life to exploring. The union of consciousness and unconsciousness. The moment when the ego stops trying to dominate the psyche and instead bows to the deeper intelligence within. This is not a collapse. It is a homecoming, a return to the truth that has always lived beneath your fears, a recognition that your wounds are not your identity and your flaws are not your fate. The self emerges not as a theory, but as a presence that feels like pure being. You sit beside this inner figure. The pool reflects both of you, side by side, as if the water were showing you a truth your mind had forgotten. The reflection is steady. The water does not ripple. You see yourself without distortion, not the self shaped by expectations or past roles, but the self that exists beneath them. The stillness of the pool becomes a metaphor you feel rather than think. Healing does not come from rearranging your broken pieces. It comes from remembering the part of you that was never broken. As you look into the reflection, images rise. Moments of clarity. Moments when you acted from instinct rather than fear. Times when love flowed through you without condition. Times when your inner knowing guided you even when you doubted it. These moments shimmer across the water like small stars. They remind you that your essence has always been intact, untouched, waiting. The figure beside you finally lifts its gaze. It is your gaze, but deeper, clearer. Eyes that have seen every pain you lived and still hold compassion for every version of you. You feel something open in your chest, a softness that is not weakness but strength, a sense that you are not alone inside yourself. You have never been. This presence has carried you when you felt lost. It has whispered to you through dreams. It has held the blueprint of who you truly are while you wandered through confusion. You realize this part of you does not need fixing, saving, or improvement. It simply needs recognition, acknowledgement, communion. It needs you to sit with it the way you would sit with a wise elder in a sacred sanctuary. And as you sit here, breathing the same slow breath, something inside you begins to align. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but deeply, quietly, honestly. The figure places a hand upon the water. A ripple forms, gentle and slow, expanding outward like a blessing. You feel the movement echo inside your heart. A wave of calm spreads through you, dissolving the tension you carried for years. You sense that when you leave this chamber, you will not leave the presence behind. It will walk with you. It will guide you. It will remind you that healing is not a destination, but a relationship with your own soul. You rise once more. The temple glows faintly. The forest beyond the archway seems to breathe with you. You feel whole, not because anything was added, but because nothing is hidden anymore. And yet, beneath it all, something still calls your name. You step back from the chamber of the self and return to the forest that has carried you through each threshold of your inner world. The air feels different now, warmer. You walk slowly, feeling the presence of all three parts that have met you on this journey. The trembling loneliness, the fierce protector, and the timeless center. They move with you now, not as scattered fragments, but as threads of the same soul woven back into alignment. The river appears again, winding like a silver path through the landscape. Its waters seem clearer than before. You kneel beside it and watch your reflection ripple gently. This time you do not look away. You recognize that the person staring back at you is not someone who needs fixing. It is someone who has learned to carry their truths with honesty. Someone who has begun to reclaim the feelings they once abandoned. Someone who is learning that the heart does not heal through force, but through presence. As you touch the surface of the water, memories rise around you like soft echoes. You see the child who once hid their fear behind silence. You see the defender who battled on your behalf when the world felt harsh. You see the wise presence who waited patiently for your return. These figures were not separate spirits scattered through the forest. They were parts of you, parts that longed to be recognized so they could finally come home. You feel them merging with your breath. The psychological landscape shifts again. You begin to sense how each part of your inner world was never meant to be rejected. The wounded child taught you sensitivity. The protector taught you strength. The self taught you presence. Together they form a triad of wholeness that no external achievement could ever offer. You realize that your suffering came not from these parts, but from turning away from them. The ache you carried for so long was the ache of separation from your own soul. A soft wind moves through the trees, like a long exhale from the forest itself. You follow the breeze to a clearing where the fire from your second encounter still burns. But now the flames are calm. Their color is deeper, almost golden. You sit beside it and feel the warmth spread across your skin. The fire no longer reflects suppressed emotions ready to burst. It reflects expression, integration, a steady flame that reminds you of the vitality you reclaimed when you met your inner defender without fear. You place your hands near the fire, feeling the heat rise into your palms. The metaphor becomes clearer than ever. Fire can destroy or illuminate. It can rage or it can guide. The difference lies in whether it is denied or embraced. You sense the same truth in yourself. When you suppress your inner fire, it burns you from within. When you meet it with consciousness, it becomes your strength, your drive, your boundary, your passion. The flame grows steadier as you breathe. It becomes a symbol of your reclaimed vitality. The forest darkens slightly, but the darkness no longer feels threatening. It feels like night in a sacred place, where silence becomes a form of truth. You walk deeper into the shadows and see the trembling figure you met first by the river. But this time it is not trembling. It sits calmly, its small hands resting gently on its knees. When it looks at you, its eyes hold a quiet trust. You sit beside it, feeling the soft earth beneath you, and realize that the loneliness you ran from for so long was never a void. It was a request for your presence. You touch the ground and feel a vibration beneath your fingers. It is the pulse of your own inner life. The longing you once tried to soothe with external validation, external achievements, external distractions. You see now that the longing was never for something outside. It was for the simple act of being met, being seen, being allowed to exist without needing to justify your emotions. The child part of you leans slightly toward you, not for protection, but for closeness, for recognition, for warmth. You rise again and stand in the center of the forest. The trees seem to circle around you in silent communion. The air holds a stillness that feels sacred. You breathe into this quiet and notice how your breath feels different, fuller, deeper, as if it carries the rhythm of the forest itself. You close your eyes and sense all your inner parts aligning, like constellations forming a single shape across the night sky. A light begins to glow behind your closed eyes, soft at first, then brighter, rising like the first rays of dawn cutting through a long night. This is not the light of denial or forced positivity. It is the light of integration, the light that appears when you stop treating your inner world as something broken and start recognizing it as a living ecosystem. Every shadow becomes a guide. Every emotion becomes a teacher. Every silence becomes a doorway. You open your eyes and see the forest illuminated by this inner dawn. The colors deepen. The air shimmers with clarity. You feel something like gratitude rise from your chest, not for perfection, but for truth, for the honesty of your own being, for the quiet revelation that healing was never about becoming something else. It was about becoming whole, becoming present, becoming the one who listens to every part of the soul with compassion. You sense the self standing beside you again, not as a separate figure, but as a presence within your breath, your heartbeat, your awareness. You feel guided, supported, rooted. You walk back toward the river, the fire, the clearing. Everything looks the same, yet everything feels changed. You have not transformed into someone new. You have reclaimed who you always were beneath the layers of fear and forgetting. The forest opens to the night sky. Stars shimmer above you like silent witnesses. You stand there, breathing the cool air, feeling every part of you alive. Not fixed, not perfected, just met. And yet, beneath it all, something still calls your name. You step out of the forest slowly, carrying the warmth of everything you have reclaimed. The night around you is calm. The sky above you feels vast, but not overwhelming. For the first time in a long time, you feel the quiet certainty that you are not walking away from yourself. You are walking with yourself. Every part of you moves in harmony, like different notes finally finding their place in the same melody. You pause at the edge of the trees and look back. The river glimmers softly through the branches. The fire emits a steady glow. The sacred chamber rests in silence, waiting for your return whenever you need it. Nothing is closed. Nothing is lost. Everything you met along the way still lives within you. The child who longed for presence. The protector who burned with truth. The deeper self who watched it all unfold. They remain with you, not as burdens, but as companions. You feel the ground beneath your feet. Solid, warm, familiar. You inhale and notice how your breath sinks deeper into your body, as if it is finally allowed to take up space. Healing is not a dramatic transformation. It is this simple fullness, this sense of standing inside your own life without trying to escape. You realize that the ache you carried for years was a longing to return to this moment, to return to yourself, to meet the parts you abandoned without shame. As you begin to walk forward, you sense the subtle truth settling within you. You do not heal by fixing the cracks in your identity. You heal by stepping into the room where every version of you is waiting to be seen. You heal by listening to the trembling voice beneath your armor. You heal by allowing the fire within you to illuminate rather than scorch. You heal by resting in the presence of the self that has always held you, even when you felt alone. The air grows cooler, but the warmth inside you deepens. You notice your body feels different, less tense, less guarded. There is a steadiness in your chest that feels like an anchor, a quiet knowing that no matter what happens in the days ahead, you have a place to return to. A place within yourself that will not collapse under the weight of fear or expectation. A place where you are met, not judged. You look toward the horizon. A thin line of light touches the sky, suggesting the first hint of dawn. You realize that this journey into your inner world was not an escape from life. It was a rehearsal for living it more honestly, more gently, more fully. The day ahead will bring its challenges, its uncertainties, its noise. But now you know that the forest remains within you. The river remains. The fire remains. The self remains. Your steps become lighter. Something inside you feels open, like a window you forgot existed. You sense that in the coming days, the world will not feel as sharp, not because it has softened, but because you have. You have learned to meet your emotions with curiosity instead of resistance. You have learned to sit with your own truth without trying to mold it into something more presentable. You have learned to rest in the presence of your own being. You reach a point where the forest fades into memory, but the experience stays alive in your breath. You whisper something only your soul can hear, a promise to return, a promise to listen, a promise to remain connected to the truth you found here. You take one more breath, letting the silence settle gently around your heart. And in that final breath, you feel it, a peace that arrives not as a conclusion, but as a quiet presence, soft as a whisper inside your chest.